Hello. Now for the Aramaic of the week. 2 more weeks, this week and next week in Daniel, and then I think we'll do something in Hebrew from then on for a while. Haven't decided what. Feel free to weigh in. But let's go ahead and read. We're getting to the end of the interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. This is interesting because that should be a vocal schwa after a long vowel like that. Uvayomehon. 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 You know what Uvayomehon lives next up the street from me. Uvayomehon. D Malkaya Inun Yahim Elah Shemaya. All right. So it's long, but the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So this is and in days then. And so let's go ahead and bring up and in the days of them, in those days, something like that. And in the days of them, in those days, that D, the kings. So remember we had two kings. We were getting to the feet, where you have the feet are mixed iron and clay, and in those days, those kings, Inun, Malkaya, Inun. So this is those. Both of these are plural. There's the word for the. And in the days of those kings, remember two kings that fight each other. I think the standard interpretation is that these are the two Seleucid and Ptolemy Greek kings. However, there is another interpretation we'll mention in a second, but I think probably the majority scholarly interpretation is that this is a reference to the two kings in Syria, the Greek king of Syria and the Greek king of Egypt in the 100s BC. And in those days, those kings, God will cause to rise. Yakim. This is kum. We know kum from Hebrew, and it's also in Aramaic. And with the hierarch yod, this is the H or causative stem, cause to rise. It's hifil in Hebrew, hafel in Aramaic, but same basic sense of cause to rise. And the hierarch yod is a sign of the H. And who will cause to rise? God will cause to rise. Elah. Elohim, of course, in Hebrew, but Allah is God in Aramaic. So in the days of those kings, the God of the skies will cause to rise. The God of the heavens will cause to rise. Shemaya, so Kamatz Aleph, again, is the, and Shemayim in Hebrew, Shema again, it's a plural. It's a dual in Hebrew, two skies. Somehow in their psyche they thought of heavens as being two parts, I guess, at some point at least. Let me go ahead and I don't know where my screen is. I brought it down for the beginning for my sake, but I'll put it back at the top. Don't know how that shows up in the recording. Okay, so in the days of those kings, God, the God of the skies, will cause to rise a Malku. He'll cause a kingdom to rise, a kingdom a kingdom that La Al-Min, a kingdom that is for the ages. This is usually translated forever. I don't know that they had a sense of mathematical infinity time. To the ages is kind of a sense of for as long as anybody alive, can remember. So I mean, 1,000 years is a kingdom for the ages, I would say. From the Hebrew point of view. Again, we read these things and we insert our cultural perspective and don't always know that they may have looked at things differently. For the ages, I think, is more of a sense of a very long time rather than a mathematical infinity or anything like that. Anyway, of course, if you interpret this in terms of Jesus. Now, I don't know that the audience of Daniel would have interpreted in terms of an expectation of a Jesus or something like that. But if you were to interpret it in a kind of spiritual sense of Jesus, then it would be for mathematical infinity. But anyway, a kingdom that for the ages, la titkabal, will not be destroyed. La, we know, is not. In Hebrew, it's lo because the Canaanite shift. Aramaic, it's la. And then to the ages, olam, we know olam from Hebrew. La is two, and then this Hirik Yod Nun is a plural. So it will not be destroyed. So tit kabal, the tit on the front is the hit pa'el in Hebrew. It's HTD stem. It's not hith pa'el in Aramaic. What is it? It's let me get my memory going here. Hold on a second. Let's follow the vowels. Hit pa'al. Let's go ahead and just follow the vowels there. So this is a kind of a reflexive will be destroyed. So that kingdom, the kingdom that will arise after the mixed kingdom, is a kingdom that will never arise. Now, again, this is where it gets a little thorny with your interpretation. Again, I'll just say there are some scholars, this is, I hate to call them mainstream scholars, but probably mainstream scholars would interpret the book of Daniel in relation to the Maccabean crisis. Maccabean crisis happened from 167 to 164 BC. And so this would be basically an expectation that out of the Maccabean crisis would come an independent Israel. And of course, there did come an independent Israel out of the not entirely independent, but the Maccabean conflict did result in relative independence for the next 100 years or so for Israel. But of course, if you take this in a more mathematical sense of infinity, then of course it makes, it fits very nicely if you take this in terms of Jesus. And so you can understand why there's another group of readers of Daniel who would suggest that the divided, I don't know what they would say the divided kingdom is in terms of the two kings and so forth. But if you make that the Romans, if you make the divided kingdom the Romans rather than the Greeks, then that sets up nicely for Jesus. And of course, you can read it in the spiritual sense, regardless of what it originally meant. Anyway, I'll leave that there. But this kingdom will not be destroyed. Mal kuta, and the kingdom. So sometimes it seems like Aramaic sometimes does kamatz aleph for the, and sometimes does kamatz hey for the. And the kingdom, la'am, to a people, akaran, to another people. Which again, if you go with this group of scholars, is referring to the Jewish people, the Maccabees. And if you go with the other, then it would be to Christians, to followers of Jesus. La, tish to vik. When you have two shavas next to each other, the first one is a silent schwa, and the second one is a vocal schwa. Takik, tadik, the ta, safe, call, Elaine, mal ka the ta. Okay, and to another people, kingdom to another people, will not be left. So there will not be any other kingdom. It will all go to this end kingdom, which again, if you read it spiritually, could refer to the Christian kingdom. If you read it in terms of the Maccabean crisis, it would be a prediction for the Maccabean, for Israel, basically, to be independent and on its own. So two different interpretations there. So this form, tish to vik, is another HTD or hith pa'al. And this happens in Hebrew too. We have a metathesis of the sheen and the ta. So the word is shavak. And so it should be another, like up here, tit on the front of the hith pa'el, third masculine singular, I believe it is. Let me double check that real quick. Sorry, third feminine singular, because we're talking about a kingdom here, right? this kingdom will not be destroyed. It will be a different people, and there will not be left another people. It'll just be the Jewish people in charge of this new kingdom. So this is a HTD. It is third feminine singular from Shavach. Another kingdom will not be left. I think the passive thing there is coming from the HTD. It will break, tadik. So this is dakak. It's a geminate with two kofs at the end. So this tav is again third feminine singular. Let me shake out the words here a little bit. Spread out a little bit. So it will break, this new kingdom will break, third feminine singular. This is, I think this is Hiphiel. There's no Hiric Yod, but there is the Hiric. It will cause to break and will cause to fill. So again, the Yod is a hint there. All these kingdoms. La tishta vik ta dik the ta safe kol il lane mal ka va ta. It will cause it will break and it will fulfill all these kingdoms. They'll be gone. There'll just be one kingdom left, and of course that's the kingdom of Israel, I assume, or the kingdom of Christ. And so here's the conclusion: Vahi takum v'al maya, and she, that is the kingdom of Israel, I assume, or the kingdom of Christ, will rise, takum, third feminine singular. This is just a G or a all stem, to the ages. Again, similar to what this form we saw up here, except it has a kamatz aleph for the. All right, so bottom line is, and in those days, the days of those kings, the mixed feet, the divided kingdom, the God of the skies will cause to rise a kingdom that will not be destroyed to the ages. And the kingdom will not be left to another people, but that new kingdom, it will break and cause to fulfill all these other kingdoms, and she will rise to the ages. Again, two different interpretations, that this is during the Maccabean crisis, that it's predicting that Israel will prevail for time immemorial, or others would say this is referring to Christ, the kingdom set up when Christ came. So there you have it, the Aramaic of the week. A little rough today, Daniel, and I'm not going to redo this video. I'm going to leave it as it is in its roughness. Daniel 2:44, the Aramaic of the week.